Just as a warning, there's some flashing lights in this video, so if you have a photosensitivity, proceed with caution. We typically open this show talking about nostalgia in some respect, whether it's my personal relationship with the episode's featured title or some throwback culture surrounding it, but I only learned about today's game after starting this series. However, upon playing it, it managed to evoke memories of a vibe I haven't felt connected to in a very long time. See, this game is dense. Multiple branching story paths for 8 of the 9 main fighters with at least 2 endings each, and while the game is fun, it's not exactly easy. And while I was frustrated by the amount of work I'd made for myself, a possum who is not great at video games, the more I played, the more connected I felt to a teenage me sitting on the floor of my mom's basement, pouring hours into unlocking every permutation of every ending and a title I loved. I did not do this thing today. Time and skill often make fools of our grandest ambitions, so excuse any omitted details as I cover as much as I can, but that desire was there. That itch. In that way, today's subject gave me more nostalgia than games I actually played when I was younger.
Techromancer!
I'm Eric J. Chucky, and welcome to Violent Profiles, where we discuss obscure fighting games and the rosters that define them. If you enjoy this series, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. It would get this show out to more people, and that gives me the encouragement I need to engage in in-depth independent research for cool, esoteric fighting games. Originally released in arcades in September of '98 before arriving on Sega's Mean Dream Machine almost 2 years later, Techromancer is a Capcom joint of all things. I don't think we've had the opportunity to talk about one of the best gaming companies of my youth yet on this show. You know, now that I mention it, we haven't talked about Konami on Violent Profiles yet either, an equally important producer of a lot of my childhood favorites. I should rectify that soon. I don't really care for mech stuff as a genre. I've barely heard anything about it from the internet at large. This is in fact the first Dreamcast game I've ever played. Fortunately, Techromancer was received fairly well, and depending on the reviewer, it was perfect for hardcore fighting game fans, casual fans, mecha fans, anime fans, and people who like renting video games. I'm at least one of those, so that's promising. The backdrop is fairly simple, all the better to hang those branching plots around. Hey, is that Kareen from Street Fighter? Neat. It's the nebulous future where technology has advanced to extremely comfortable levels. An alien threat called Goldibus decides he wants to conquer Earth, and some combination of plucky heroes stand up to him. The details fluctuate pretty severely depending on whose story you're playing. A character might be presented very differently in one story than they are in another, and even the setting itself can get some significant tweaks. That all sounds really deep and compelling, but unfortunately this dialogue is on the level of a stupid anime.
Nani?
In saying that, I don't mean that all anime is stupid, of course, just that if you've seen at least one half-ass shonen trying to cop Dragon Ball Z style, you can probably guess the wafer-thin plot of Techromancer. At least the cutscenes are novel, with a lot of dialogue between fights and episode titles that pop up to introduce the next challenge. Even if the things they're talking about are kind of brain dead, it's a nice touch of presentation, and the kind of content folks I was friends with back then were devouring voraciously. I started with Armor Knight Grand Kaiser, piloted by Junpei Todoroki, because that seemed like the default main character on account of how he's listed first in the manual, on the selection screen, and I have a functional pair of eyes. Especially if you're a mecha fan, you'll notice this man vehicle bears a striking resemblance to Mazinger Z and Great Mazinger. G Kaiser is made of a revolutionary super alloy called Orichalconium. I know that sounds stupid, but that's what it says in the game, and possesses an exclusive dimension system, whatever that means. He was built in a secret lab by Junpei's father and grandfather, the latter of which dies at the beginning of his story mode, and the former who supposedly died beforehand with his wife, but is revealed to secretly be working as the enigmatic figure Shadow Red. I see what you did there, Capcom. Junpei is helped after his grandpa's death by the late Doctor's pupil, Professor Tatsumi, and his daughter, Sayori, who promised to carry on Dr. Todoroki's work, which mostly means hanging out in a lab while remotely shouting their concerns to Junpei. As the main character, Junpei has the most branches in his storyline, and bear with me on covering these across all characters, as not only is footage of the game hard to find, but this is one of the more difficult fighters I've played on this show. Let me be clear, the combat is good. It's unique, so it takes some getting used to, but it's solid. It's kind of like if you threw a couple of Street Fighter's simpler traditional command specials on top of the 6th entry's controversial modern setup. So you can button mash missiles and laser beams with ease, and also pick up items that temporarily improve your mech and grant access to additional weaponry. It results in fun, frenetic combat in a style few other games share. Unfortunately, the enemy enjoys all the same benefits you do. I managed to make it to Goldibus on various fighters several times, but that dude has 4 health bars to my 2, and that's one too many for me. At the end of the day, I couldn't beat him after hours of trying. 3 health bars would have been fine. 4's a bit much. Come on, not even Dark Souls does that. The branching paths also usually have set requirements to unlock them beyond just selecting a specific dialogue option on screen, like defeating an enemy with your flashy final attack without losing a round or breaking your armor or within a specified time limit. Usually they stack 3 or 4 of those requirements on one fight, so you can see why it's tricky, yet compelling. For Junpei in particular, let's take a look at how things shake out depending on our reaction to Sayori calling out after us as we leave. When I ignored her, she got kidnapped by Arakshim and Diana-17 came in for the assist before challenging me to an honorable duel. I didn't discover Shadow Red was secretly my dad, and instead I got a small scene at Grandpa's grave. I did eventually fight all the same challengers when I chose to stick around, though Diana-17 seems to be a more antagonistic figure, and I instead fought Arakshim after Goldibus. He tried to keep me busy while Goldibus's space castle crumbled around me, but I survived and Junpei made it home in time to return to his studies with the help of Sayori and what is probably supposed to imply some kind of budding romance. I barely know this woman and she has forearms like Roll from the classic Mega Man series. Why would we date? Choose the other option, and despite your final battle being against the more appropriate Goldibus himself, you're too late to escape the destruction of the castle and Junpei dies alone in space. Sayori has hope he'll return, but we all know those hopes are unfounded. You beat the game, the hero is dead. And Yuna dances. When will she stop dancing? When will it stop?
Yuna won't stop dancing.
But these paths weren't binary in nature. Junpei alone has 8 different branch points leading to 3 endings, though for the life of me I can't find the third one anywhere on the internet. If you know where I can find footage of it, let me know in the comments and I will shower you with praise. The same can't be said for FX004's Super Defense Armored Dixon, specifically when piloted by Halma Frockhart. You can also choose Nakato Farland as the pilot for this Gundam-inspired machine, which offers a few branching paths, but we'll get to him. Let me enjoy this simplicity while it lasts. Halma is a genius prodigy, having skipped several grades and being one of the most capable mech pilots the world has ever seen. As much as she resents being overworked and run through the ringer by Instructor Thompson, she's eager to prove her skill and tired of simulations and easy opponents. At the same time, when she graduates and joins the fight against the invading force of copycat aliens, the Auto Machine Corps, she laments leaving her friends behind, particularly Raid. After a successful campaign on Earth, Halma is sent to the Auto Machine homeworld to eliminate their queen by the problematic mustache-sporting general of Earth's armies. Deep in enemy territory and finding herself surrounded by their forces, she's delighted when Raid comes in for the save, allowing her to enter single combat with the queen, who is all 4 health bars Goldibus here, and emerge victorious. Upon doing so, the entire Auto Machine Corps disappears and Halma has to cope with having committed genocide. Genocide. As ordered by... 9999999. The Dixon mech itself has beam cannons, a rocket launcher, grenades, a rifle, and a laser sword. You get orbiting satellite guns that can reflect projectiles too. It's pretty fun to control, which is good since 2 different characters use the same moveset for their stories. Nakato has escaped from somewhere with the Dixon mech, and despite being in over his head emotionally, showcases exemplary piloting abilities. Like Junpei, he has an older man and younger girl shouting their concerns at him in the form of Captain Bates and Cheng Ming. Mostly he just seems to be trying to survive, being pursued by Shadow Red and the Rafaga Corps, who are working for Nakato's father, the Premier. But over time he allies with the military academy the Captain and Cheng Ming are working for, helmed by... oh snap! We learn that Nakato's father in fact started the war, and Dixon is sent to the enemy moon base to confront his forces and end the conflict whose horrors traumatize him with every successful battle. When he finally defeats Shadow Red, the Premier's pawn self-destructs in a bid to take Nakato down with him. But no matter which of the 2 endings you achieve, Nakato survives and returns to Earth to begin a new life free from his father's tyranny. Let's pivot to the messenger of beauty and justice, Diana-17. As agile as you'd expect from being the girl one, I know there are several other female pilots, I'm talking about the robot. My favorite parts about Diana-17 is that she can fire rainbow beams, a homing butterfly swarm, and bubbles. I also appreciate that she has a hunting spear, since the goddess her name is indirectly in reference to is a goddess of the hunt. I'm told she bears similarities to Mazinger Bot's Diana A and Aphrodite A, but Alright. I think Diana-17 looks cooler than either one of those, but then I've always preferred Capcom's robot designs to their original inspirations. Diana's pilot, Reika Amamiya, is a student who fought Goldibus 1 year ago, but only made it through 2 of his health bars before he got away. Determined to stop his plans, Reika recruits a fighting force to help her deactivate 4 bombs simultaneously to save the Earth. After finally overcoming all 4 of those HP meters, her allies wait for her return and celebrate a sufficiently saved day. However, if you don't do so well against Grand Kaiser, the story becomes more about saving your fellow students Maki and Shizuka, who I guess isn't Karine, and Reika's main quest picks up again with her trying to recruit Junpei in a teaser-style ending for the opposite route. I really like that heavy armored tank GZ-56 Wise Duck is operated by a team of people, including our main focus, combat specialist Arvin Clawford, the leader of the unit, Sergeant Gonzalez, Ricky the gunner, communications officer Herman, and Thomas, who is the proper pilot of the mech. To help sell the concept of this thing requiring a full crew, Wise Duck can't jump. In its place, it gets a landmine that it can blow itself up with, which isn't ideal, but it does come in handy for some CC in a 3D combat environment. It's got a sweet machine gun, and the grab attack with its claw where it shoots you while grabbed is very satisfying. If you like Destroid from Macross, this mech might be for you. The Gonzalez team's story focuses on some similar themes to Nakato's, the horrors of war, expressing humanity and compassion in times where terrible things must happen in the name of defending what you hold dear, and a somewhat reluctant rookie in Arven adapting to these circumstances. Wise Duck's decision point is whether you're willing to follow orders and wipe out a civilian village in pursuit of victory, or hold on to your morals more dearly. Somewhat counterintuitively, if you choose to respond, "I am a soldier," the unit slowly comes around to your side and you fight back against the corrupt army you once served, converting other soldiers to your ideals and taking out anyone who would rather serve blindly. It's not super clear if the army is working directly for Goldobus, being puppeted by him, or if he comes in as a third-party threat later in the story, but during the final battle he kills everyone in the crew, leaving Arven the only survivor. Years later, Arven visits Wise Duck, which stands as a memorial to honor the crew's sacrifice and commitment to justice. Insist you are human, however, and ultimately Arven is killed by Sergeant Gonzalez for his perceived weakness, his body left in the desert as the unit joins the main force.
War never changes.
Is what I would say if I hadn't gone back to confirm the context for myself. Unlike a lot of the branches I don't have confirmation for, I accidentally achieved the convoluted if x equals y and z equals a, then you should activate branched theta unless m equals m requirements to unlock it. M can never equal m, by the way. What does M stand for, you ask? Monkey. It stands for monkey.
Monkey!
Monkey!
Monkey. War changes.
The crew of the Wise Duck wake up in an alternate future timeline where monkeys have risen up and built their own mechs to fight against the humans. The final boss of this branch is a monkey piloting Grand Kaiser, and once you defeat him, you get the aforementioned ending. I don't know if the monkey thing is supposed to be a fever dream in the dying mind of Arven. I don't know if they got back from the monkey future and Gonzalez shot him anyhow. I don't know. I don't know. I implore you. If I have glossed over any details in the other stories on the level of secret future monkey war, please comment about it. I want people to know. I want to know. Let's move along to something that hopefully does not involve monkeys. The Air Force's Strategic Variable Fighter YF-37 Rafaga is inspired by the VF-1 Valkyries from Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. Pilot Simon Harvard himself likely cobbled together between Maximilian Genius and Roy Fokker from that anime. The Rafaga can transform into an aerial jet and a spinner mode, which is used in its final attack. Despite the questionable utility of the somewhat cumbersome control scheme of the jet fighter, it's cool. And the default humanoid version of the mech has a lot of missiles, floating mines, and ray beams. Rafaga honestly feels like an alternate all-rounder to what Grand Kaiser has to offer. Simon is quite the charmer, and when he defeats the jellyfish-looking Kivarl mech, he finds Yale, an alien woman, as the pilot. Harvard and Yale, haha. Taking a shine to her, Simon hides this woman away with the assistance of his second-in-command, Amarita, who totally isn't Claudia LaSalle, and continues to fight against enemy forces. Between missions, Simon and Yale get ice cream and go to the movies. The plot thickens as Junpei and Pulsion both assert Yale is dangerous, but it turns out the nefarious deeds performed in her name are indeed the actions of her quote-unquote twin sisters, other robots designed to pilot other jellyfish mechs for Goldobus's wicked, non-specific plans. Yale remorsefully admits she is transferring intel back to the enemy as she was programmed to do, but Simon refuses to destroy her despite both Amarita and Yale herself insisting it's the best option. As an anime protagonist, Simon understands the true best option is to defeat Goldobus and enjoy your swell new robot girlfriend. In his second path, Simon is less romantic with Yale and more obsessed. He says she resembles the angels from a picture book that was important to him as a kid, so he insists on protecting her from anyone and everything. Similar to the other story, outside forces warn him against keeping Yale around, but even though he's eventually stripped of his rank and banned from flying Rafaga, he insists she be allowed to stay at his side. Eventually, Yale reveals she is but one of many who are part of Goldobus's ultimate form and joins with him after a tearful goodbye. Once Goldobus is defeated, we pick up a bit later with Simon despondent despite passing the psyche evals mandated by his bizarre behavior. Since he was in control of his actions, he's sure he'll be punished for his transgressions, and though he's proud to live up to the role of the hero of his picture book, right down to the prince facing the king of devils that was made out of angels, he still misses Yale and even refuses Amarita's offer to be his princess. But then Simon's spirits are lifted as, for some reason, a childlike version of Yale is led into the room.
Jail. Right away. No trial, no nothing.
Let's give this the benefit of the doubt. Simon isn't expressly romantically into Yale in this path, like I said, though there's some questionable allusions when comparing them to the prince and princess roles from the storybook. But what exactly happened here? Did she get rebuilt as a child? Did she appear this way after Goldibus was defeated? Is it supposed to be some kind of magic since she appears more human now? Or is this, as Amarita suggests, like Wise Duck's ending and we're just witnessing Simon's delusions? Either way, this is probably the worst translated path in the game. I don't like it. Speaking of children I don't like, precocious pair Daichi and Sora Yumino, sibling pilots who commandeered Phantasm Unit Twinzam 5, are next on our list. I will say the mech itself is pretty slick, with two forms depending on which of the siblings is piloting in the moment. Daiichi's fire formation has a sick axe and a Pharaoh Man-style charge ball of flame, while Sora's plasma formation wields a mace, shoots missiles, and has a glowing plasma trap and diving spin kick. I think I prefer fire here, but both are solid options. Some of the story dialogue changes depending on which of the kids you pick, but it's mostly the same. The two orphans are having recurring dreams about piloting Twinzam, which is a fiction in their world, like all mecha robots. It makes the fights feel less connected to a narrative than in other characters' paths, and their ending follows similar structure. Daiichi is sad another sweet robot dream has ended, while Sora is touched to dream of their deceased mother whom they've never met. If you're hankering for something that isn't your typical mech, look no further than magical patched robot Bolon. This delightful monstrosity marries three concepts I really like: magical girls, junk, and clowns. While the mech might not be specifically clown-themed, the way it gambols around the arena and flails its arms is delightful. Maybe it just reminds me of the very clowny Bounce Man. It attacks with a crane arm to shovel dirt at you, drops gigantic iron balls or even turns into one, gets a drill arm, and is overall just fantastic to control. I wish I could say the same about Polyam de Polinten, better known as Pollen, the pilot and creator of Bolon, and it's not just because she's apparently one of those magical girls in the vein of Creamy Mommy that can turn from a preteen into a more adult form, although that is still a problem, Japan.
Stop it. Get some help.
The real issue is the annoying plot where Pollen insists she and Junpei are engaged to be married, Sayori believes her, and ridiculous harem hijinks ensue. I'm not a fan of these tropes. I'm not a fan of children. But I am a fan of a robot made out of houses and a giant globe and such, so I'll endure Pollen for the sake of Bolon. Her endings are both ridiculous, one seeing it revealed Goldibus is her father and she was sent to distract Junpei but truly fell in love with him, and the other where her mother, who is also Goldibus, looks for revenge against Junpei and Pollen sicks Bolon on her and they fight comically across the globe. This has made me very tired. Let's talk about Fighting Force Pulsion, a shout out to Ultraman, who is the character referenced by this series that I had the most pre-existing knowledge for, which is still admittedly not much. And there's also a few Evangelion references in there for you if that's your thing. Pulsion has a few swell energy blasts like most of the roster, but my favorite part is the fighting style that's described as space karate. Depending on your choice, Pulsion is an alternate form of either Kai or K, a giant being they become as opposed to a robot they climb into. The stories are very similar, with the supporting cast of talking heads and the child Goro who figures out Pulsion's true identity, the military leader in charge of Earth Defense Corps BIT, Commander Ogami, and the random man who is also there for some reason, Mr. Shima. They both fight the same array of enemies, including an evil Pulsion, before confronting Goldibus to save Earth. Both slowly lose the potency of their powers over time, and both share a similar primary path ending in flying off into the literal sunset, but their second endings and interactions with Diana differ slightly. Kai was a former pawn of Goldibus who was inspired by the love he feels for the people of Earth when Diana used her power to remove the mind control binding him long ago. This path treats her more like a true goddess, who is implied to resurrect Kai as an Earthling in the aftermath of his sacrifice. Whereas in K's ending, Diana is more of a peer who believes the Earthlings should only fight off the Goldibus core on their own, and fights K about this, revealing her true name to be Kayrum.
Am I supposed to know who that is?
When Kay makes her noble sacrifice, Diana admits she was wrong, and Kay's floating head or whatever is proud of the work she did to save Earth, even if we do a lot of really horrible stuff like pollution, war, and desert-based construction vehicle death matches, hoping the things she believes in, that the people closest to her believed in, will have more of a role in defining their future. Finally, we come to the Red Chaos, samurai-themed Mario Shogun Gorai, piloted by Shadow Red, the often mind-controlled, frequently maniacal father of Junpei, Mamoru Todoroki. One of the smoothest mechs to operate, Gorai has amazing reach on its non-projectiles and hits hard. He's got a charge-up point-blank energy bomb and goes to town with his katana, Zankuken. Maybe not my favorite character, but definitely one of the best. His blissfully one-track storyline sees him pursuing his own agenda to kill Professor Tatsumi, who was the assassin that killed Mrs. Todoroki, while undermining his supposed boss Goldibus. Over the course of the story, both Junpei and Eric Sheem realize Shadow Red's true identity, and it's revealed that Tatsumi was acting under Goldibus's orders for the assassination. He bids his son farewell and finally confronts Goldibus, annihilating all 4 of his stupid health bars and saving the Earth. Reconstruction begins, and Junpei asserts that no matter where Mamoru has gone, no matter what he said or did, he is proud to be his son. And that's more or less it. If exploring every permutation of the character stories isn't enough for you, there's also a hero challenge mode that's more like a traditional arcade ladder where you earn points for unlockables, which can also be done through mini-games you download and play on the VMU. That was the fancy memory card with a screen gimmick that was one of Dreamcast's big selling points back in the day. I did not check those out, as even if I could on my current hardware setup, I don't care. Because of the extreme amount of work that goes into unlocking said unlockables, I did not unlock them. Amarita gets her own version of Rafaga, there's an evil version of Kai with Dark Pulsion, and variant armor Blodia 2 Custom, piloted by none other than Jin Saotome from Cyberbot's Full Metal Madness, Armored Warriors, and of course, Marvel vs. Capcom fame. They don't have their own story modes, so I feel less bad about not bothering to check them out, but it is cool that they're in there. I'd also like to touch briefly on the unplayable villains of this game, frequently collectively called the Goldibus Corps. This game has a lot of cores. Kivarl evokes Elmeth from Mobile Suit Gundam, Gamda seems to be some kind of Egypt-themed kaiju, and Goldibus himself is likely inspired by the Great General of Darkness from Mazinger. As I said, not playable, no story mode. Who they are changes wildly depending on who your protagonist is, so there's not much to say except that I wish I could play Kivarl. That thing looks neat. One last reminder that despite me often clowning on some of the more absurd aspects of the stories, this game is good. It's one of the best titles I've played on this show, and that's without having a past connection to it. My only complaints are about the difficulty of achieving different branches and how much cooler the overall story would have been if they connected better. It's shocking that Professor Tatsume murdered Junpei's mother when it's revealed in Shadow Red's story, given how much effort he puts into guiding Junpei to victory. But are those events actually supposed to be connected, or is one more canon than the other? Either way, small criticisms for an otherwise astounding game. Whew! This one was a lot. Next time on Violent Profiles, I could use something a little less complicated, maybe on a different Sega system. You can see that episode now by piloting over to our Patreon and subscribing at the $5 tier, which would also include you in the elite ranks of the names currently on screen and permit me to buy a new video game or something. I like video games. Until next time, white out.